Good morning. I apologize, but I don't normally like to read from notes, but I think today I probably should. So good morning.
Good morning.
I do a little better than you on that, actually. Many of you know me, Steve Johnson, my wife Krista, and our daughters Emma and Grace. You know me as a husband, a father, a farmer, a banker, or even as a deacon here at Pepsi. That brief 5 seconds of silence may have felt uncomfortable for some of you. That 5 seconds of silence was uncomfortable for me. But seconds really do matter, which is why I am here today. I have lived my life with an illness, and I likely always will. It is not cancer, but it has remission. It is not one that most want to discuss, and it is often misunderstood or shameful. People don't tend to wear ribbons in honor of surviving it. In fact, many don't realize a green ribbon is a symbol of mental health and depression awareness, or that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Yes, I am a survivor of depression and suicide. My personal battle with depression and suicide attempts dates back to my early years in grade school. I can remember I would refuse to get dressed in the mornings and throw literally every article of clothing from my dresser to the floor as Mom would try to dress me. By 5th and 6th grade, I suffered extremely low self-esteem and believed I did not belong or that I was loved. Church was not a safe place. I was bullied and even fought at choir practice, where on steps not unlike these, I gave my bully a bloody nose. At an early age, I wondered, why is God punishing me? At about 11, while Mom was in the grocery store, I left the car and ran a mile down the road to an old field. I hid there for hours. I eventually walked nearly 15 miles to the next town, cold, hungry, scared, and tired. The first second was when I dropped a quarter in the payphone and called home for help. Outpatient counseling in 5th and 6th grades taught me coping techniques and made adjustments that got me through middle school, although it was not easy at times. After 8th grade, I chose not to be confirmed because of the hypocrisy I felt existed in my treatment by others at church. If they were what God was about, I wanted no part of it. As a freshman in high school, I suffered severe depression and a complete lack of self-worth and a longing to die. I cannot count the numerous times with a 12-inch wooden-handled Chicago cutlery kitchen knife at my heart that I threatened to take my own life. I can still at times feel a dull pain in my chest, and I wish I could tell my mom how sorry I was. She would hold me as we both would shed tears, and she'd try to convince me in these moments that God and my parents loved me. In high school, I would often sit on the shore of Lake Michigan at night alone and listen to the waves. It was a safe, peaceful, reflective place for me. And one night, just before Christmas, I came home from there. And I don't remember all of the details of what happened, but I remember being cold and terrified while my father had me pinned to the ground. We were struggling, and I can remember him yelling at my mom to call 911. He was begging for her to call because he could not hold me down, and he was scared of what I might do to myself. That night, surrounded by police and paramedics in the front yard in the glow of Christmas lights, I begged for help to feel better. I didn't want to continue living with such pain and such a desire not to live. This was the second. As my classmates went back to school after Christmas break, I entered an inpatient mental health care facility by my own wish. I asked for it at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago. So at about age 13, for 60 days, I was broken down and systemically built up. I remember being stripped of possessions, privileges, and living a completely structured, managed life. After 30 days of being inside, I got to go outside, into the frigid late January air blowing off of Lake Michigan, on a supervised walk. I felt lucky. I felt excited and privileged like I had never experienced yet in my life to get to go for a supervised walk on a freezing cold January day. I had never felt so alive. Over that 60 days, I was made new again, and I reintegrated into high school successfully without anyone knowing the real truth of where I was or what I had been doing. They just knew I was in the hospital. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, I earned one of 20 spots on the soccer team that more than 100 kids had tried out for. I can remember I had to convince the coach to keep me as a freshman instead of cutting me. I promised him I'd work harder than anybody else on the team, and I'd never let him down. And he kept me. 2 months prior, I'd been doing everything I could to take my own life. Who was this new me? I didn't let Coach down. We went on to win 3 state championships, and we lost on a bad call in the 4th one against me. Who was this new person? I went on and played NCAA Division I college soccer and coached in college. I was successful in the classroom. And after college, I entered the workforce, and for the first 10 years of my career, I was advancing and moving across the country, several times garnering promotions that kept getting bigger and bigger. I got bigger titles, bigger paychecks, greater responsibility. All the while, only a very select small group of people knew of my struggles. Soccer and then work had become my lifeline. Identity, purpose, and my community. And then it hit me. I was about 30, alone and flailing through life without even realizing it. I was absent an anchor, purpose, or community other than a cutthroat work environment. I still can remember the near odorless choking fumes, nausea, and dizziness, as with tears streaming down my face, I managed to shut the car off in my closed-in garage in California. I was asking God, why do I hurt so much? Why won't you let me die? That was the 3rd second. When I shut off the car before it was too late, enabled me yet another chance. But it did not heal me. A few years later, back in Colorado, while finishing my master's degree, suddenly, at a Christmas dinner with mutual friends, God brought the woman into my life that would help change my life forever. Krista captivated me, and in 6 months, I became a husband and a father. Yet I had still not overcome my lingering illness. I just continued to use the lessons and tools that I had learned through the hospital and through my therapy to mask and manage it. Not long after we were married, I again found myself struggling severely during a time that it should have been full of elation. I will never forget the taste of the cold metal barrel in my mouth, my hand on the trigger in desperation, and my still new bride finding me in the closet. But in this, the fourth second, without being clear to me at the time, God had yet intervened again. Through Krista, He provided the tough love that I so desperately needed. She stood by my side, and our life began to change forever. She threw open the door to my understanding of how cowardly and selfish I was in my desire not to live. To fail to see that God, the creator of the universe, has a purpose for me, that I was trying to interfere with Him and with His plan, and she urged me to turn to the Lord. The cowardice and selfishness was my belief that I was in control of my life, as opposed to laying it at the feet of the Lord. Through my struggles with depression and attempts of suicide, I had learned practical applications and coping skills, or survival skills, with the help of medical and psychological care. But I also had developed a false belief that I had a relationship with God. Just a private one, a more personal one. I think we've all heard people say that. But I know today, this was patently absurd. I was never in control. God most certainly was, and had and has a plan for me. I have not come to a full understanding, acceptance, or realization of that plan yet. But I pray and hope to. My most recent challenges manifested this winter with near debilitating anxiety and depression. But it was this fifth second was very different. The difference was raising my hand to God and calling on God for help and asking for His help, part of which included calling on the resources that Pepsi could provide. Talking with Doug, talking with Gary, and saying, I need help again. Instead of turning to devices of destruction this time, I was raising my hand to the Lord, and I turned to tools of enablement, tools that give life, not take life. I turned to the Bible. I turned to prayer. I turned to Christian-based counseling. And I turned to community with my Christian brothers. My quest the last few years and now is not to destroy myself, but to build myself up. To find and live out what that plan is that God has for me. I have realized that turning or leaning into Jesus, not away, is the path to healing and rebirth. Which is what those 5 seconds were. We have this choice every day in how we respond to the events and things that happen in our world. We can choose to turn in, or we can choose to turn away. And I know that when I now turn in versus away, I am a better husband. I am a much better father. I'm a better man. And I'm a better child of God. I am still working very hard to make life better for me, to make it better than just okay, to a life in which I truly feel enriched and blessed. But I now believe and have hope that through faith, through the Lord, this will happen. My struggles will likely continue, and I'm okay with that. They have made me who I am, and they will always be a part of me. But they have a much looser grip on my life now that I have turned my life to the Lord, and He has a tighter grip on me. As you have heard and will be hearing, Pepsi has a vision of a new Christian-based counseling center here on campus. I urge you to learn about this amazing vision and opportunity and the impacts it can have on our church, our families, our broader community, and on us individually. I share my story because it has only been by the grace of the Lord, the forgiveness and healing hand of God, combined with medical and psychological care, that I am here today to even be able to share it. I pray that my story provides hope, courage, support, or reassurance to even just one person to seek help, to have the strength to say, Lord, help me, or to stand behind the Healing Families, Transforming Lives campaign. As Psalm 147:3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. I am proud today to say that I may be wounded, but I am constantly healing and healthier than I ever have been. And more importantly, as Romans 10:13 proclaims, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. I have been a slow learner, and I have tried very, very hard to resist. But I know now that the seconds of turning to Him are much easier than the days, the weeks, the years that I spent turning away and resisting. I assert to you that no matter how desperate we may feel, or sinful we have been, or how desperate we may feel, or how afflicted we may be, that we have a merciful, forgiving, loving Father who is capable of making all things new and freeing us when we turn to Him. God bless you.